Another veteran quarterback made available, another veteran quarterback associated with the silver and black. That plus more on Friday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for February 14th, 2025. It's Valentine's Day. Let's get it.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you. If you're catching the show wherever you find your favorite podcast, that's great. If you're checking out the YouTube page, that's great as well. The show continues to grow each and every day, and that's because of your support. And, of course, on the YouTube page, because of the job that my man Ari does behind the scenes, making sure we look good and sound good each and every day. Doesn't matter how late he's up. He'll stay up late night to make sure that everything is looking good. So we definitely appreciate him. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. You can hit me up as well at your boy Q254. And if you want to be a part of the show, as many of you do, 707-654-4693. That's the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. We got your calls and texts. Closing out the show today, segment number 3. Plenty of feedback. Want to get as many calls and texts in as possible as we head into the weekend. I always like to kind of load up segment number 3 just so we don't have a whole bunch of calls that are waiting throughout the course of the weekend. So we'll do our best to get as many in as possible. Coming up with segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Segment number 2, we'll take a look at all the available veteran quarterbacks or quarterbacks that I believe will be available as far as veterans go that the Raiders could have interest in, but every one of their names will be associated with the silver and black because, as I've said so many times for so many years, that it's always better, it's always sexier when someone's name is attached to the Raiders. There's going to be so many rumors, and there's so many rumors out there already about all these different players that want to be a part of the Raiders or the Raiders have interest in, the Raiders want to trade for. So many different names out there that are floating around. I tell you, be cautious with all the different rumors that you read and that you hear because, again, a lot of them are just, well, they're just kind of fabricated and generated to make the story sound a little bit sexier because it's just kind of what it is when it comes to silver and black. But we'll take a look at some quarterbacks, especially now there's a new addition to the quarterback mix, being Aaron Rodgers. Once he found out, or at least we all found out, we kind of knew it on Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday. The report came out from Adam Schefter that the Jets were going to move on, but on Thursday they made it official, and they sent the letter out and everything. So they are moving on from Aaron Rodgers. He will not be the Jets quarterback in 2025. So now he's added to the mix when it comes to the Raiders. But that's all coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here in segment number 1, news and notes of the day, as I always do. We'll jump right into it after I tell you about the title sponsor of the show, which is FanDuel. And right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. I'll tell you more about them later on in the show. And on Thursday, I teased that Mel Kiper Jr., my guy, ESPN NFL draft analyst, was going to be a part of the show, Joe and Q on ESPN Radio. And if there was anything good from that, I wanted to make sure to bring that sound to the show. So we had a good 8 to 10 minute conversation with Mel, and I had about 3 sound bites that I wanted to bring to the table. So let's go ahead and jump right into that. The first one, and this is a really good question. My guy, Hardcore Raider, who listens to my radio show quite a bit, Unnecessary Roughness on Raider Nation Radio 920, actually brought this up, I think, on Wednesday. He was talking about generational talent. Then he knew that Mel Kiper was going to be on my radio show on Thursday and actually tweeted at me and said, hey, can you ask Mel about generational talent? What are the traits he's looking for in a generational talent? So I asked the question, Mel gave the answer. What traits are you looking for in a prospect that you would consider a generational talent?
I would say Travis Hunter would be the guy, and unless Abdul Carter is going to be Micah Parsons, if he's going to be Lawrence Taylor coming off the edge, that's generational. If you're going to be a 17, 18 sack a year guy, then that's generational. And if you think Abdul Carter, this is the first year he was able to just pin his ears back and get after the quarterback. Remember, he was playing off ball, so this was the first year and he did it. So if you think Abdul Carter can be a closer out the first half, everybody talks about, get the possession at the end and get another possession, double up. Well, guess what? You need a closer getting after the quarterback, and that would be Abdul Carter. If you say, hey, have we ever seen a guy can play both ways? We've seen great athletes like Champ Bailey, and we've seen Woodson, Charles Woodson, but they didn't play both ways in the NFL. This guy's going to play both ways early on. So that would be generational for Hunter. And like I say, if you think Carter can be a 15 to 18 sack a year guy, that would be him.
There you go. Mel Kiper Jr. talking about traits for a generational talent, and you see what he said. Travis Hunter, right? And that's the one that he really feels confident in is a generational talent in this draft. Look, there's over 300 guys that are being invited to the combine. He pointed out one guy that he felt confident in saying is a generational talent. The other guy, Abdul Carter, the edge rusher from Penn State, if he's a guy that's going to get 17 or 18 sacks a season. Max Crosby, Raider Nation, has not had 17 sacks, 18 sacks in a season yet. And I think he's a great talent, right? So that kind of lets you know how high the bar is when you're talking about generational talent. So in this, draft season, combine, the pro days, all that other stuff, there's going to be so much conversation about generational this, generational that. Is he a generational? Look, there's not very many. That's why it's called generational, right? I mean, it's the elite of the elite heading into the NFL. And Mel just broke it down. Travis Hunter, and that's really because of his ability to go both ways, both a cornerback and a wide receiver. And, oh, by the way, his combine invite had him listed as cornerback, Travis Hunter, not wide receiver. I've said it many times. Whoever drafts him, when they go to the podium, they're going to say, saying he went number 1 to Tennessee. The number 1 overall pick, the Tennessee Titans select cornerback, Travis Hunter. Well, why would he do that, Q? He wants to play both ways. The team is going to select him as a cornerback. The position is cheaper than wide receiver. It's basic economics. It's real simple. Cornerbacks get paid less than wide receivers, so they're not going to announce him as a wide receiver. That would mean that his initial contract is a lot more than your cornerback. So that's what they're going to announce. Now, he may be able to fight that, say that he's both. I don't know. But I guarantee you, when he gets selected in the end of April, whoever selects him is going to select him as a cornerback in the National Football League. So just a couple more sound bites from Mel Kiper Jr., who was a guest on my radio show, Joe and Q, on ESPN Radio on Thursday. And this one came from me about Shedeur Sanders. And the reason why I brought him up, one, I like Shedeur to the Raiders at number 6. We've seen multiple drafts, or mock drafts, I should say, that have Shedeur at number 6. Field Yates, Matt Miller, Daniel Jeremiah. We talked about those earlier in the week. Well, Mel, he had Shedeur mocked to the Giants at 3. So I asked the question, well, why did you have Shedeur at 3 as opposed to your other colleagues, Matt Miller, Field Yates, and Daniel Jeremiah, who had him at 6?
Q, that was weeks ago, and I'll have an update coming up in 2 more weeks, and I'll be talking to some teams this weekend. That was with the idea that Tennessee was going to take a quarterback at 1 and take Cam Ward over Shedeur at 1, based on everything they were saying. After that, a few days later, said, we're taking a generational talent. Well, a generational talent's not Cam Ward. A generational talent would be Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, cornerback, receiver, or pass rusher. So to me, if they go that route, then, or somebody could trade up and get a quarterback, maybe Tennessee would move down, but they lose that generational talent. So let's just assume Tennessee stays at 1 and takes Hunter or Abdul Carter, then that pushes Ward with more mobility off of that pick down to 3 to the Giants, and that's how everybody ends up with the Raiders with Sanders, which makes sense unless they go Darnold, as I said, or unless the Jets trade up maybe to 2 at Cleveland, who needs a lot of help a lot of places. Maybe they go up and get their quarterback at that point, which would be Cam Ward. Then the Giants will lose out. Or if the Giants want to guarantee Cam Ward, they would have to go from 3 to 2. We've seen that before, right? We've seen teams have to go 1 spot to guarantee the acquisition of their quarterback. Exactly. It didn't work out so well there, but they still did it. They could have stayed where they were, taking Mahomes. But they didn't. They moved up 1 spot and got Trubisky. But here the same thing could happen if the Giants say, hey, Cam Ward is our guy. We know we'll lose him if we don't go up to 2. They may have to do that. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But I would think that Ward and Shedeur Sanders are gone inside of pick 7, and certainly Cam Ward probably no later than pick 2 or 3.
So basic, Mel just had him there earlier because he had Cam Ward going number 1 overall to the Tennessee Titans. So he doesn't believe that, the top 2 quarterbacks will get out of the top 6. I don't believe the top 2 quarterbacks are going to get out of the top 6. But again, going back to that generational talent conversation, that's what Tennessee put out there. Hey, we're, looking for a generational talent. We won't pass one of those guys up. So that could be a smokescreen. They could still go with Cam Ward, and then maybe the G-man gets stuck with going with Shedeur Sanders if that's who they want. We'll see. We don't know. So many things could change in between now and obviously April, but that's why he selected Shedeur at number 3 with the G-man. And, of course, there's a lot of different teams, including the Jets, who now need a quarterback, that they might decide that they want to leapfrog the Raiders, leapfrog everyone, maybe go all the way up to number 2 to get their quarterback because they feel like they need their quarterback. You heard Mel kind of break that down there in that little soundbite. The final soundbite is about, all right, QB1, Cam Ward. QB2, Shedeur Sanders. Who's QB3? Is it Jackson Dart? And if it is, how could he get into the first round?
He's trending that way. I had him at QB3 about a month and a half ago. I'll talk to some more teams this weekend. It seems like they're getting all their things together now. The Combine's coming up in pro days. I think the draft analysts now seem to be in agreement at QB3 with Jackson Dart. I'm talking about, Field Yates, I'm talking about, Jordan Reed and Matt Miller and our guys. I think we're all, thinking maybe QB3. I can't speak for them, but it seems like maybe that's the way they'll go. I know Tyler Shuck, Louis Riddick talked glowingly about Tyler Shuck based on the Senior Bowl practices. Kyle McCord from Syracuse is gaining steam. Will Howard, obviously, after the way he played in that gauntlet of games, to lead the Buckeyes to a national title. And then Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe had one great game. Had he bottled that great game against the elite opponent, would have been talking about him. So he didn't. He was inconsistent the rest of the way. So those are the options. I'm with Jackson Dart at 3. Do I think the Steelers will take him in the first round? No, I don't. I think the Steelers will take a wide receiver or a corner, so I don't think that's a spot for Dart, but I do think he could go in the late first round with somebody maybe trading back in.
So there's Mel saying that it's trending that Ole Miss quarterback Jackson Dart. I definitely wanted to bring that to the show because, again, a lot of people on this show has talked about Jackson Dart and what he brings to the table and how it feels like he's trending in the direction of the number 3 quarterback, and would not be shocked, just like Mel said, if someone were to trade out of the second round and trade back into the first round, the back end, to pick up Jackson Dart as QB number 3. Again, however you want to put him in whatever kind of numerical order. Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart. It feels like that's the consensus top 3 quarterbacks in this draft. And then you have other guys that you can slide in there. Again, I was a big Jalen Milroe fan. Still like Jalen Milroe a lot. Wish he had gone back to Alabama for one more year. I know my guy Vinny Bonsignore is really high on Jalen, thinks that he's a guy that you could draft and let him sit for a little while and then he'll be ready to go. I think if you draft Jalen Milroe, and this is not just the Raiders, I mean, this is any team, you draft Jalen Milroe, he's sitting at least 2 years. At least 2 years before he's ready to go. And that, I don't know if that's a good investment that you want, especially since he's not a first-round guy, so he's not going to have that fifth-year team option. I mean, if he's a second, third-round guy, whatever the case may be, the most he can get is a 4-year contract. So if you let a guy sit for 2 years, maybe even more, you've already have his contract you already burned with him on the bench. I just don't think it's good math. I don't think it's a good way to build your team. But again, I'm not the one making the selection, so we'll see what different teams do when Jalen Milroe goes and when he'll actually get into action. But again, I know that he's not ready for NFL action right now. I also wanted to pass this along really quickly. This is the final little nugget I have for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. There was a really good article on NFL.com. Tackling grades for all 32 teams. The Next Gen Stats team on NFL.com put this thing together. They ranked all 32 teams, right? The Chiefs were ranked number 1 as far as tackling efficiency, right? Not having very many missed tackles, just being sure at the point of attack. The Broncos were number 3, and the Chargers were number 11. Those are obviously all AFC West teams. KC 1, Denver 3, and the Chargers 11. So where were the Raiders? 27th. 27th. And you wonder why a team only won 4 games. And it's wild to think because I actually feel like the defense helped keep the Raiders in games, but they were 27th, again, according to Next Gen Stats, when it comes to tacklings. What they said, they gave them a grade of a 65.4. I was in school. I didn't do well. Had a lot of 65s. I know that that's a D. Matter of fact, that's almost an F. And when you're 27 out of 32, yeah, you're just about failing. But check this out. They said after boasting a top 10 defense in the back half of the 2023 season under then interim head coach Antonio Pierce, the Raiders regressed in his first and only season as the team's head coach, primarily due to tackling woes. The Silver and Black finished 2024 ranked in the bottom 10 in tackle efficiency, first tackle opportunity conversion rate, and yards allowed after missed tackles. One bright spot was team tackle leader Robert Spillane, the lone Raider to record a missed tackle rate under 10%. Let me read that again. The lone Raider, meaning only, uno, one, solo. The lone Raider to record a missed tackle rate under 10%. Unfortunately for Las Vegas, he's due to hit free agency in March. Again, that's on NFL.com. Again, it's called Tackling Grades for all 32 teams. The Chiefs are number 1, Broncos number 3, Chargers number 11. They all made the playoffs. The Raiders won 4 games and did not. They earned the number 6 overall pick. They were ranked 27th. That is no bueno. That is no good. That is all bad. No matter how you say it, no matter what language you say it, it is 2 thumbs down. No doubt about that. Coming up in segment number 2, there's another quarterback to add to the veteran mix that could be in line for the Silver and Black this offseason. We'll talk about all those quarterbacks and how they would fit, if they would fit. We'll do that in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about the title sponsor of the show, and that is FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you missed the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth-quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I'm telling you, the player props bet are the most fun. They really are, especially when your player is really close to hitting that mark and you just need one more bucket, one more rebound, one more assist, one more steal, whatever the case may be. You're like, come on, baby, you got to get it, right? That is exciting. That brings the fun to it. Right now, have some fun as well. New FanDuel customers can get a $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to dip our toes back into the conversation when it comes to quarterbacks, when it comes to veteran quarterbacks that could be available. And, of course, that's going to be the theme for the Raiders all offseason long. What are they going to do? We know currently under contract they have Aiden O'Connell. We know currently under contract they have Gardner Minshew. We know they have Carter Bradley on the practice squad. I believe that room is definitely going to be shuffled up sooner rather than later, right? John Spytek and company are going through the roster right now. They're seeing what fits, what doesn't fit, who they bring back, and who they don't bring back. I believe Aiden O'Connell will be in the mix. I believe Gardner Minshew will be let go, and he'll end up going somewhere else. Carter Bradley, maybe he sticks around, maybe he doesn't. Not too sure. He doesn't really factor in this any, as far as I'm concerned, as nothing more than a guy on the practice squad, maybe a guy that at some point could be a backup. So we found out on Thursday officially that the Jets were moving on from Aaron Rodgers. They're willing to take a $49 million dead cap hit to move on from him. That's similar to what the Denver Broncos did with Russell Wilson, even though it was $85-something million that they moved on from. They gave him $85+ million to say, yeah, go away, we don't want you. Well, that's what they're doing with Aaron Rodgers in New York with the Jets, and I think that's smart. New head coach and Aaron Glenn, he's saying, hey, you know what, this is how this is going to go. I got a culture here that I'm trying to build, and you're not going to be a part of it. One of the stipulations, this is according to Diana Rossini from The Athletic, was that if he stuck around Gotham City and was with the Jets, then he couldn't go on the Pat McAfee show anymore. He couldn't do all the side stuff that he's got going on, all the different media outlets that he's a part of, but mainly the Pat McAfee show every Tuesday. So clearly he wasn't willing to give that up. The Jets decided to move on from him. $49 million, like I said, dead cap hit to their salary. It'll be a post-June 1st designation, so they'll split that up. Well, now he's available. So the question is, what does he do? Is he going to stick around? Is he going to play some more? Is he going to retire? I would find it hard to believe that he's going to retire. But the question is valid. Would the Raiders be interested in him? Right? There's two teams that are favored to land him. The Pittsburgh Steelers and the Las Vegas Raiders. Why? Because they both have veteran head coaches that if they decide that they wanted to entertain this guy, they could say, yeah, hey, but you're not doing this. We're not having that. It's going to be this way. This is our culture that we built, and this is all it's going to be. If you're ready to do that, cool. We can rock with you. If you're not willing to do that, we don't need you. And so that's why the Steelers and the Raiders have been talked about the most when it comes to Aaron Rodgers. Not to mention, as I've said already, one, the Raiders need a quarterback, and two, it's always convenient to add the Raiders' name to any kind of rumor that's out there. So Rodgers is out there, right? Who knows what kind of deal he'd be looking for? I'm assuming, and this is just an assumption, and we know what assumptions do, I'm assuming that he's not going to demand a whole lot of money because, again, he's still getting his money from the Jets. But that's not necessarily true. He might think, hey, I'm an elite quarterback. I need to get paid elite quarterback money, even at this stage of the game. I don't know what he's looking for. But, again, if you're looking for a short-term bridge guy, and that's what I'm looking for, right? I believe that the Raiders need to find a short-term bridge guy. Maybe Aaron Rodgers is the guy they look at. He's not a guy that I'm high on as far as, I think that he would be a good fit. But out of all the guys that are available, just pure skill, he has the most. Just pure skill. Now, that's taking personality out of it. That's just taking the kind of guy he is out of it. That's taking all the drama that he brings. That's taking all that out. I'm just talking about what he brings on the field. He still threw for about 4,000 yards in 2024, even though the Jets were not a very good team. Then there's Sam Darnold, who a lot of people have talked about. You want to talk about my guy, Vinny Bonsignore. He is pounding the table for Sam Darnold. Him in the morning tailgate on Raider Nation Radio 920, it's like they're sponsored by Sam Darnold. They think that Sam Darnold is the guy. I don't see it. And the reason I don't see it, one, he's going to want a big payday. But two, he's been in the league how many years? He was a first-round pick of the Jets. Then he went to where? The Carolina Panthers. Then he went to the 49ers, and then he ended up in Minnesota. None of those teams had success with him. Then all of a sudden he had a little bit of success. Well, he had a lot of success last year in Minnesota until he didn't, until the last 2 games of the year, week 18 and the first week of the playoffs. But I get concerned when guys have been in the league as long as he has and finally have some success. And then, boom, it's in a contract year, and it's time for them to go get paid. Something about it, and the great John McClain tells me all the time, Q, be cautious when it comes to guys in contract years. Somehow, some way, they play a little bit better. They're a little bit healthier. They're a little bit more on point when it's a contract year. Well, Sam Darnold is about to get a major payday, especially since the draft class for the quarterbacks is not real good. It's not real sexy. There's literally 2 guys that we expect to get drafted in the top 5, top 10 as far as QBs go, and there might not be another one in the whole first round. So it's not that sexy. So he's about to cash in on the fact that the draft class is weak and the fact that there's not a whole lot of veterans out there that are much better. Again, the guy that has the better skill set is Aaron Rodgers, but we all know he's older. He's a Band-Aid at best, right? But he might be the best Band-Aid for a team like the Steelers or a team like the Raiders or a team like even the Giants, maybe Tennessee, but maybe not. Who knows? But any team that needs a quarterback, obviously he'd be available for. Russell Wilson, he was on the cheap in Pittsburgh last year. I thought that he was cooked. Thought, not really too high on him, but, I've come around to maybe a bridge guy. He obviously knows Pete Carroll really well. I could see him being a guy that understands, hey, man, this is not the franchise guy. I'm not that guy. I'm the guy that's leading to the next guy, right? And all these guys that I'm talking about here in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, they all come with the caveat that, by the way, the Raiders are going to try to draft their franchise guy, their quarterback of the future, which is another reason why I'd leave Sam Darnold alone. Because, again, if you're going to pay him the money that he's going to be commanding, which is probably $45 million a year at least, that's not a bridge, right? If that's a bridge, that's an expensive bridge. That's one bridge I can't pay. That's like the Bay Bridge. Remember at one time in the Bay Bridge, it used to cost $1 to get over the Bay Bridge? What is it now, like $10? You got to sign over your first child, and you got to, give a DNA sample to get over the bridge now? Like, it's massive. It ain't cheap to get over the bridge no more. That's the kind of bridge that Sam Darnold would be. He ain't no cheap one, right? So he's going to be a guy that's going to be your franchise guy 3 or 4 or 5 years. Right? At least that's going to be his expectations. And I know that Kirk Cousins signed that big, massive deal in Atlanta, and then they went and drafted Michael Penix, but you saw how that didn't work out. So we'll see how that all plays out. But, Darnold, that's who he's going to be. Wilson, again, I think you can get him on the cheap. Here's a name that's interesting to me, and the reason it's interesting is because I've kind of softened my stance on this guy, Justin Fields. And the funny thing is, on my radio show, we had this young lady, Valerie from Denver, call in and say that she's watched a lot of Justin Fields play, didn't think that he had a really good offensive coordinator in Chicago, and look what he did in Pittsburgh. He was 4-2 to start the season, and obviously he's got mobility, and, he could throw a little bit. Like, his arm's not fantastic, but, as a bridge guy, as a short-term guy, might not be a bad solution, especially because he's younger. So I sat on it. I sat on it and thought about it because, I've been very adamant that no Justin Fields, no Justin Fields, no Justin Fields. Last year when the Raiders went and hired Luke Getsy as their OC, we all knew Justin Fields was out of the equation. But now with Chip Kelly as the OC, I thought, well, maybe he could design it where he just gets the ball out of Justin Fields' hands quickly, gets it to Brock Bowers, gets it to Jacoby Myers, gets it to Trey Tucker, right? Gets it to Big Mike, just really quickly. Nothing that he has to have some precision passing game. But again, only as maybe a 1 to 2 year guy, as a bridge to make way for the next guy. So given the price, I might be open to Justin Fields, which is funny because I was 100% against him even last year. It's like, no, thanks, but no thanks, because I don't trust his arm. And I still don't trust his arm consistently. But knowing that he could run for 1,000 yards, as he has in his career, might be someone that's intriguing, especially for this Chip Kelly-led offense. Again, it's not necessarily the Oregon offense when he was like basketball on grass, but it's still, a creative offense, and he could use the threat of Justin Fields running to his advantage as he designed and plays. So that kind of opens up my eyes to him a little bit. I'm warming up to Justin Fields. Kirk Cousins, he's not available right now. Maybe he's going to be released. He might be okay since he'll be now, 2 years removed from the Achilles? He tore his Achilles back in 2023. It'll be going in 2025. He played last year. You saw him when he went to Allegiant Stadium, that Monday night game. Didn't really look very good. I think that was week 15. Didn't look very good. He got pulled the next week. But I feel like, an offseason, of healing, he'll probably be a lot better. But again, he's not released. If he is, maybe he would take, a Russell Wilson type deal. And then Geno Smith is a guy that people are talking about could be potentially traded, and that's just going in and tying the Pete Carroll ties together because he was in Seattle. And look, Pete Carroll turned him into a pretty decent quarterback, right? He got a contract extension, so maybe he's available. But there's a new name in the mix, Aaron Rodgers. Again, I'm not real high on Aaron Rodgers, but I know just from a ability standpoint, he's the best one there. But I still think I lean either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields as a bridge guy. There could be others out there, but I think that those are the two best. And I may be leaning more Justin Fields, which is wild to say, than I am even Russell Wilson. What's on your mind? Your calls and texts are coming up next, 707-654-4693. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell you about another great sponsor here on the show, and that is PrizePicks. Football season may be over, but basketball is in full swing, and there's no better way to stay in the game than with PrizePicks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With PrizePicks, you pick more or less on at least 2-player projections. If you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash. You can look at Jason Tatum for maybe 29 points. If he hits that, boom, all of a sudden you're good. Or you could say maybe he's not going to hit that, and if he doesn't, then boom, you're also good. Either way, you can set up your lineup in less than 60 seconds. Their fast and secure withdrawals mean you get your winnings in as little as 15 minutes. Plus, you'll love their weekly promos like Taco Tuesday, where you get discounted player projections for even better value. How do you do any of this? Well, you got to download the app today. Use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with a text from Mark in Visalia. Hey, Q. First time, long time. Met you under the torch at the last game of the season. Today's my birthday and wanted to comment on spending. They don't need to spend big to be successful. The Redskins once won free agency, and how did that work out? Don't get me wrong, pay max, but the Raiders need to spend on homegrown talent so the players will want to join them in free agency. Then they'll have the better depth so they succeed if they have major injuries. Food for thought. Congrats on your success. I appreciate a Raiders perspective. Fans that work for ESPN, these ESPN guys need reminders of who we are and how good we can be. Raiders over Giants and Jets. In the words of Sam Snead, I think they better recognize. That's Mark in Visalia. Appreciate the text, my man, and happy birthday. And yeah, they don't need to be big spenders, but the point of that segment on Thursday's show was that Albert Breer expects them to be big spenders. Max Crosby should be a no-brainer. A couple other guys that they have 29 free agents. Some of those guys, like a Robert Spillane, should be a no-brainer. Nate Hobbs, probably be a little bit challenging. Maybe a Trayvon Merrick, depending on how much he's going to demand on the open market. He could be a little bit challenging, right? There's some guys out there that could be challenging. I think Adam Butler, I think you could bring him back at a decent rate and feel good about yourself. But there's some guys that can help probably with the team immediately. The other thing I'll caution when it comes to Albert Breer expecting the Raiders to be big spenders, maybe he's looking at a Sam Darnold. Maybe he's associating Sam Darnold with the Raiders and saying that that's going to cost a big payday. Again, I'm not all for that. When we were talking to Mel Kiper on the radio on Thursday on ESPN, he said that would be the way that the Raiders go and get a super talented dude at number 6, maybe a T-Mac from Arizona, the wide receiver, maybe a stud defensive lineman, any of those guys. That he could see that if they go and get Sam Darnold, spend big money instead of going and getting a quarterback in the draft. I think for the quarterback woes, you just got to go get your franchise guy out of the draft. But that's me. And if you can find and identify your franchise guy, a lot of times that's harder than it sounds. And if everyone could do it, they would all do it, right? So, yeah, they don't necessarily have to be big spenders, but it sounds like they're going to have plenty of money to be big spenders, and he expects them to be. So thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from my guy, PE in North Carolina, calling to talk about the QBs and has one on his mind that nobody, and I mean nobody, is talking about. Here he is, PE in North Carolina.
What up, Tupac? What up, Raider Nation? PE from North Carolina. Q, there's a lot of quarterback talk going on right now, but there's one quarterback that nobody's talking about that I believe that we should take a look at and probably go get, and that's Sam Howell. And the reasons are, in my opinion, Sam Howell is better than all the QBs in this year's upcoming draft, except for Cam Ward. A lot of people like Shedeur Sanders. In my opinion, he's got a stronger arm than Shedeur Sanders. He's faster than Shedeur Sanders. He's a better athlete than Shedeur. He can do everything that Shedeur can do, and he's already in the league. Second reason, Q, is you can get him for a lot less. If you wanted to trade up for a quarterback, you can possibly trade a third or fourth round pick and get him from Seattle versus trading away all the other draft capital to move up to number 2 or number 1. So you can possibly get him for a lot less. And as far as free agent quarterbacks, people are talking about Sam Darnold and Matt Stafford and Kirk Cousins and all these crazy names. But Sam Howell is under contract. He's in the third year of his contract. So you would have to pay him a lot less than any other of these free agent quarterbacks. The next reason, Q, is he's a baller, man. The dude's got a strong arm. He's athletic. He can run. And he's a dog. I watched him for 3 years here in North Carolina. And the dude's a player, man. He's got heart. A lot of times we give Derek Carr the excuse of he played for all these different OCs and, whatever. But when he went to Washington, Washington wasn't in a good place. He played for 2 OCs his first 2 years, and one of them was Eric Bieniemy. And, we all know what people think about Eric Bieniemy now. So, the guy deserves a chance to be a starter. Next reason, Q, is Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, and Ben Johnson. Pete Carroll helped Geno Smith revitalize his career. Maybe he could do the same for Howell. Chip Kelly runs the offense that Sam Howell has been running since high school. So Sam Howell is made for this offense. I think that he would fit really well in. And there was a report out, Q, that Ben Johnson wanted to sit Sam Howell as well last year in Washington if he was going to take that job. So if we believe Ben Johnson is that guy, then and he wanted him, so it must be something there. So, I think Howell is a good guy to look at. And worst comes to worst, if you trade a third or fourth round pick for Howell, Q, and you still want to draft a quarterback, you can. So there's nothing holding you back from still getting the guy that you like in the draft. So those are the reasons we should look at Sam Howell. Peace out, Raider Nation.
PE, thanks for the call, my man. I appreciate you. It's good to hear from you. It's been a minute. Sam Howell, that was not a guy I had on my bingo card at all. At all. Like, if you had told me a bunch of quarterbacks, I just rattled off all these guys, Rodgers, Darnold, Wilson, Fields, Cousins, Geno Smith. I rattled off everyone but Sam Howell. Did not have him on my mind at all. He does have the familiarity with Pete Carroll, right, which is the same reason why Geno Smith is being, kind of associated with the Raiders at this stage, that they could trade for him. I'm not really sold on him being a long-term guy, but again, what we're talking about, bridge guys, I guess the situation could be similar to what Josh McDaniels did when they went out and brought in my guy from the Patriots, and now I forget his name, and I know him really well. Oh, man, the quarterback. Now he's in Denver. What's his name? How did I forget his name? He was here. He went to Baylor. I know him really well. Oh, man, that's funny that I forget his name. I could picture his face right. What is his name? I can picture it right now. It's, dang it. What is, I just forgot it now. There you go. I totally forgot his name. That's terrible. But anyway, you know who I'm talking about. The Raiders and Josh McDaniels went out and made the trade for, what is his name? Dang it. I'm so mad. Man, I could picture him right now. I could see him. He went to Stephenville High School. He was supposed to go to Texas Tech. He ended up at Baylor. He transferred to Auburn. He got drafted in the 4th round by the Patriots, and then the Raiders traded for him when Josh McDaniels became the coach so he can help train Derek Carr on the Josh McDaniels system. Man, and now he's in Denver as a free agent. What is his name? That is terrible that I can't remember. Anyway, I'll think of it. So it could be that same situation. And you probably are screaming right now at me what his name is, and I don't know it. But, yeah, it could be that kind of situation. That's possible. I don't know. That's going to drive me crazy the rest of the show. So hopefully I figured it out before the show gets wrapped up. But, Pete, thanks for the call. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Coop. Says, Q, it's your boy Coop, longtime listener, my first listen every day. On the show the other day, Max talked about Kuntz's work ethic and the lack from others. What do you hear about Tyree Wilson's work ethic and putting the time in? Would love to see a physical specimen put in Crosby-type work and turn into an absolute monster. He seems to be growing with the game, but want to see the big breakout. That's from my guy Coop. Thanks for the text. Do appreciate that. And, yeah, That's the good thing. Everything that we heard and saw about Tyree Wilson last year was positive as far as that. What you're talking about, the work ethic, being in the lab, trying to, get on Max's page, trying to, show up with Max showing up and just learn all the tricks of the trade. I think Tyree Wilson is coming along. The problem is he's coming along a little bit slower than everyone expects, especially when you're drafted number 7 overall. But there's no struggle when it comes to work ethic. He's out there. He's grinding for sure. So that's a positive. I had someone else hit me up and say that, I think Max was talking about number 7, the number 7 overall pick that doesn't have the strong work ethic. That's not true. He does have a strong work ethic. Max is complimented on that. Christian Wilkins has complimented him on that. Antonio Pierce, when he was with the Raiders, he complimented him on that. So it's not that. It's just him putting everything together. The thing is, he does it really well, and then when the game happens, it seems like things slow down a little bit, and that's the problem. So we'll see how far he comes along. Jarrett Stidham. That's who I was thinking of. Jarrett Stidham. I know right now I probably got like 10 texts coming through on the text line. Jarrett Stidham was who I was thinking of. Man, that took forever. That was who went to Baylor. That's who went to Auburn. That's who got drafted by the Patriots, who was a quick quarterback for the Raiders when Derek Carr got sat down, and now he's in Denver. Jeez. Oh, man. Jarrett Stidham. That took me forever. But, so anyway, thanks and sorry for all the distractions. I had to come up with that name. I was not going to end this show. This was going to be like the never-ending show if I hadn't come up with that name. But, I did, so thank goodness I can end the show. We'll end the show like this. Raider Eddie in Denver. He's calling to talk about the Josh Jacobs interview that I had last Friday while I was in New Orleans and has a few comments on what Josh had to say. Here he is, Raider Eddie in Denver.
Hey, what's up? This is Raider Eddie in Denver. Hey, I love the show, and I know that I am sometimes negative about the Raiders, but look at their record this year. So I think it's all right. But also, I do want to say, Q, I love what you do with this show, the way you make it authentic, the way you make it personal, and it's more than just sports. So I really appreciate the way you do that with this show, because I think it takes some bravery, to be honest, to share what you share and make it personal. Anyway, I want to address the Josh Jacobs interview. I think, you said that there's the Josh Jacobs side, there's the GM and the Raiders side, and then there's the truth somewhere in the middle. I agree with that, and what we heard Josh Jacobs say was a couple of things that I actually have a bone to pick with him. One, he said he always played hard, and two, he said that he was only offered the franchise tag and he was upset about it. Okay. First of all, it pains me to say this to you because I really liked Josh Jacobs. I always liked Josh Jacobs. But I have this perception, this is just me as a fan, he didn't always seem to run hard, okay? I know that's controversial. I know it's, some people might not like that. But I have a feeling I'm not the only fan that feels that way. And once I as a fan feel the player doesn't always play hard, it's really hard to keep backing that guy. That's how I felt about Josh. He had a couple seasons where he was below 4 yards per carry average. That's not very good. He did have some other great seasons, though. He did call himself out of games. He did seem to limp towards the end of the season, limp towards the end of games quite a bit. On the other side of it, McDaniels used him way, way, way too much when McDaniels couldn't get this offense going. So, that's part of it, too. Then, in my opinion, with Josh Jacobs' performance, I thought the franchise tag over $10 million for a season, I thought that was more than fair. So that's just me, Q. I do think that sometimes you take a very positive view of guys. There was Devontae, where you were real positive. He left a week later, There was Jack Jones. You're talking about his pass breakups. Well, you never mentioned all the touchdowns he gave up, and you didn't talk about the fact that he shied away from tackles and contact. So Q, it's all right. I'm just a different type of fan. But like I said, I love your show. I love the platform. And go Raiders.
Eddie, thanks so much for the call. Thanks for the compliments on the show. As far as Josh, I never got it as a lack of effort on his part. I don't think that he ever had a lack of effort. Now, again, Raider Nation, if you think I'm wrong, please correct me. From what I saw from Josh's whole time with the Raiders, I never saw a lack of effort. I saw the offensive line struggle. There was times when Josh went to the podium. This is his words, not mine. And he said, you see, there's nothing there. There's no holes. I mean, where do you want me to run? I mean, those were his words, not mine. So I don't think that it was ever lack of effort, lack of success as much as we'd like. Absolutely. I agree with that. Was there times that he looked like he was banged up all the time? Sure. Did he have a monster season in a contract year? Sure, he did, right? Which is something that John McClain tells me about all the time. Watch out for guys that have those monster seasons in their contract year. But that was after, they decided that they weren't gonna, pick up his 5th-year option, right? And then they were gonna put the franchise tag on him. So, that's just one of those situations. But I mean, maybe he did have a lack of effort. I'm not gonna argue it. I don't want you to think that I'm trying to cut for him because I like him, because I do. I have a lot of respect for him. So if anyone in Raider Nation thinks that Josh Jacobs didn't have effort or had a lack of effort while he was playing for the Raiders, please let me know. 707-654-4693. That was never the impression that I got. As far as Devontae and Jack, I don't really have a lot to say about those guys. I never tried. The one thing I'll tell you real quick as we close the show, I never try to come into the show with a negative attitude. I don't think that you need me to be negative. You don't need me to come in here angry, coming off with a bad attitude, because guess what? Most of the time, people are already in a bad mood. So you don't need me. I try to come in as even keel as possible, not too high, not too low. If I see something that's bad, I like to call it out and say it's bad. If I see something that I think is positive, I like to call it out and say it's positive. I don't never try to come in and be a cheerleader. I also don't try to come in and be the spawn of Satan, right? I try to stay in the middle. So it works for some people. It doesn't work for other people. Like, some people want me to be angry and frustrated and mad and pounding the table and saying, you guys suck, you're a bad person. Like a lot of people want that. They're not going to get that from me, right? And I'm also not going to pump sunshine either. I'm not going to, try to sell you something that I don't believe. If I think there's something positive that the Raiders are doing, it's because I believe it. It's not because I'm trying to make you feel good on your way to work, right? So that's just kind of who I am. I don't know. Like I said, some people appreciate it, some people don't. I guess it is what it is. So, but then the good thing is there's so many other podcasts out there that, will do that, or radio shows too that will do that. And that's cool, right? I mean, there's so many different, flavors for everyone. It's like Baskin Robbins, right? There's 31 flavors of ice cream. We don't all have to have vanilla. So, I kind of like the, Mocha Almond Crunch. That was mine back in the day, right? So it kind of is what it is. So I try not to come in too negative because I don't think that you need me to bring you down, and I don't think anyone else needs me to bring them down anyway. You're already, especially when you have a 4-13 team, I think there's already plenty of negative to go around. But thanks for the call, man. I do appreciate you. Hope you have a fantastic weekend, and, everybody does what they do all weekend long. Have a fantastic Valentine's Day, however you choose to, if you choose to celebrate it as well. Still got a text from Jeff in South Carolina, another Raider Eddie in Hollywood, Florida, and a text from Shane in New York. We'll get those in on Monday's show for sure. We'll see what else we pick up throughout the course of the week or weekend. Maybe we'll get some more news and notes. Maybe we'll find out about, coaches or players, or maybe there'll be another player that's attached to the Raiders name by the end of the weekend. Who knows? But we'll be back on Monday for sure to talk all about it. So definitely appreciate everyone each and every day who tunes in. So until Monday, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.